Okay, so I'm going to talk quickly about improper fractions and mixed numbers. So when we're adding like fractions together, earlier what we realized is that if we added 7/10 plus 6/10, the first thing you do is you add together the numerator. So 7 plus 6 is 13, and you leave your denominator the same. Okay, so our answer would be 13/10. 13/10 is an improper fraction, and what that means is that your numerator is a bigger number than your denominator. Okay, now I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you a model because I want to represent and I want to show you guys how you would turn that improper fraction into a mixed number. A mixed number is a fraction and a whole number. Okay, so first, I'm going to color in 7/10. So I have tenths models here, and I'm going to color in 7 of them. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. With another color, I'm going to come back and I'm going to color in 6 more because the equation was 7/10 plus 6/10. Okay? Now, what you might notice is in this fraction model, we don't have enough room, right? So I'm going to color in 1, 2, 3. But I ran out of room. So what that means is I have to draw a second tenths model and color in the remaining for 6/10. So I have 3 here. So here's 4, 5, 6. Okay. So if we were to write this as a fraction, as an improper fraction, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the total amount of colored pieces. Okay. So we know that this is 10 because it's all filled in. If you wanted to count individually, that's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's your numerator. Okay. Your denominator is how many pieces are inside each whole individually. So there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 inside each whole. Okay. We are talking about tenths. Remember when we add it together, when we added it together earlier, we added the numerator to get 13 and we leave the denominator alone because we are still only talking about tenths. Okay? Now, how do I turn this into a mixed number, which is a whole number and a fraction? So it's a whole and part of a second number. Okay? What you're going to do is you're going to decompose this fraction. And we talked about decomposing numbers or breaking apart numbers earlier this year. So the easiest way to do this is take out one whole. We know that one whole is equal to 10/10. So 10/10 plus 3/10 is equal to 13/10. So we just decomposed it to a whole number and whatever's left over, a whole number and a fraction. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're just going to write this as a mixed number. We know that anytime a number in the numerator and denominator is the same, that is equal to one whole. Then, as part of the mixed number, you're going to write the remainder, 3/10. So what this fraction model is showing us is that there is 1 and 3/10 colored in. So this is the easiest way to decompose and to turn an improper fraction into a mixed number. Decompose it into whole numbers and leave whatever is left over. If I was to do another example of how to decompose a fraction into a mixed number. So I'm not going to draw a model on this one. I'm just going to show you guys mathematically how to do it. So let me erase this really quick. Okay, so let's say in our example we had 7/10 plus 5. I don't want to do 5/10. I want to do 9/10. Okay, 7/10 plus 9/10. We know from the algorithm, we add together the numerators. So 7 plus 9 is 16. We leave the denominator alone because we are only talking about tenths. Okay? So what we're going to do now is we're just going to decompose this number and write this improper fraction. Remember, it's an improper fraction because the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So we're going to decompose this fraction into a whole and a part. So we're talking about tenths. So 1 whole would be 10 tenths. Okay, well, I took out 10 tenths. How many tenths do I have left? I have 6 tenths left over. Okay, so 16 tenths decomposes to 10 tenths plus 6 tenths. Okay, we know that 10 tenths is equal to 1 whole, and then we're going to write our remainder, 6 tenths. Okay, now if you started with an improper fraction, okay, now one thing that we know is in this example that I just did, you're going to have less than 2 wholes because this fraction, 7 tenths, is less than 1 whole, and 9 tenths is less than 1 whole. So if we add together two things that are less than a whole each, it's going to be less than 2. It will not be over 2. But if we started with an improper fraction, okay, we may have more than 1 whole in our answer. So let's say we start with 13 tenths and we add 9 tenths more. Same thing, we're going to add straight across. 13 plus 9 is 22, okay? Tenths is our denominator because we are only talking about tenths, okay? So think back to our very first example when we had more than 1 whole colored in, okay? So we're going to decompose 22 tenths. And how we're going to do that is by bringing out the wholes, okay? So 10 tenths is equal to 1 whole, all right? If we're thinking about it like this, what we're doing up here is we're subtracting 10 tenths. So we have 12 tenths left over. Well, this is still an improper fraction, which tells us that we could bring out another whole. So we're going to bring out another 10 tenths. Okay, so we'll subtract it up here. And we're just subtracting to keep it track. You don't have to do the actual subtraction. We're just doing it to keep track of where we're at. So you have 2 tenths left over. So now that we no longer have an improper fraction, meaning the denominator is bigger than the numerator, now we're going to write down what we have left over, which is 2 tenths. Okay, so to decompose 22 tenths, we have 10 tenths plus 10 tenths plus 2 tenths. Now we know from earlier, 10 tenths is equal to 1 whole, 10 tenths is equal to 1 whole, and we have 2 tenths left over. So what you do is you add together those whole numbers. So your answer, as a mixed number, is 2 and 2 tenths.